Over 1,000 of you have commented that I needed to put more Valentine's Day projects in my next few videos. So today, that's exactly what we're gonna do. Let's go. After scrolling around on the internet for no less than 1,000 hours, I discovered some great Valentine's Day projects that are perfect for gifts and pack big ass profits. Project number 1. We're gonna be building this easy to make but profitable Valentine's Day candle holder. For this project, I'm going to be using this piece of cedar that is 3/4 inches thick by 11 1/4 in length, and I'm going to rip it down to 4 1/2. Now before we make any other cuts, I'm going to go ahead and lay out for our heart. And there's a number of ways that you can get this cut. I mean, I could just use my laser, but I understand that not everybody has the luxury of having a laser, so I'm going to show you how you can get this cut out by hand. Alright, first step, find the center of your board. Once you get that marked, pull down 1 3/4 inches, make that line all the way across. And what I'm going to be using is a 2-inch in diameter candle to mark this out. We'll line up our candle right at that 1 3/4 inch mark we made, overlapping that center mark by 1/4 inch. Describe your upper part of this candle. We'll do the same thing on the opposite side. You should come away with something that looks similar to this. Now this is where you got to get a little bit crafty. You just want to take the rest of your curve and curve it down into a heart shape and make those lines meet back at the center. So ultimately it should look like this. Now from your outside line, mark 1 inch in on both sides of this heart. And from the top here, come down 1 inch as well. Now get those holes punched right where those lines intersect. Now it'd be great if you had a vise, but if not, you can still get this accomplished. Now just take about an 1/8 inch bit and drill all the way through at those punch hole marks. Now get yourself a 2-inch Forstner bit, and you want to drill down half the distance. Do not go all the way through because you'll risk blowing out the back. Once you get about halfway down, go ahead and spin your piece around and finish your hole. And you should be left with something that looks like this. Damn chickens. Go ahead and get your piece clamped to a bench or whatever you got to clamp to, and we're gonna get jiggy with it. Now the next thing I'm going to be doing is totally optional. You don't have to do this, but I just see it and I want to do it because I think it's really going to make this piece pop. Now what I'm going to be doing is taking the distance between my heart and the exterior here on the sides. I'm going to take that distance and I'm just going to scribe around my whole heart. And this is going to be one of two things: absolutely brilliant or dumb as I'm going to pull up 4 inches and we'll cut this at the miter box. Alright, and we're going to add 2 pocket holes, 1 1/4 inch from both sides on one end. I'm going to sand all this to 150 and get my heart shape a little cleaner, and I'll meet you back here to finish this piece up. And we'll add a dab of glue, 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 add a dab of glue. Now we'll lay out for our candle hole, and I'll mark the center at about 1.25 inches from the back. And we'll hit it with our favorite finish, the finish for dummies. Well, I think it's safe to say that my choice to cut this hard out on both sides was absolutely brilliant. I am in love with this thing. I plan on posting this for about 40, maybe 45 bucks, and I'll have no problem getting that. This thing is badass. Project number 2, we're going to be building this awesome headphone stand. Now this project is more of a unisex type of project for him or her. Let's go. Now for this project, we're going to get a little fancy, and I'm going to be using some of this 6/4 walnut. This walnut this walnut measures approximately 17.25, and I'm going to be ripping it to 4.25 inches wide. Let's go. Now basically what it's going to be is a 45-degree miter joint right here that connects two pieces shaping something like an L, and then at the top we'll have another piece that branches off, but we'll get to that a little bit later. For now, what I did was I pulled over 1.5 inches and I made a 45-degree line going up to the left from that 1.5 inch mark, and then I made a 45-degree miter line going back the opposite direction. Now from the bottom, what I'm going to do is pull up 10 inches, and at that 10-inch mark I'll pull in 1 inch, and I'll take my straight edge and line it up flush to the bottom corner, and I'll line it up with that 1-inch mark at that 10-inch length and scribe that line. Now we'll square over that 10-inch mark we made earlier, and then I measured up a 1/2 inch from that 10-inch mark, and then I just connected the dots right where that 10-inch mark is with our line we drew earlier, and just made a 10-degree angle going up. And then I'll come down from that mark 1.25 inches and make another 10-degree mark. Now down here at the bottom I'll pull over 1.25 inches at about 1.5 inches up the board. And I'm going to go back up here, and at that second 10-degree mark we made, I'm going to pull over 2.5 inches. Now I'll take my square, and I'm going to connect this point to that point. Now let's head over to the miter box and get some of these marks cut so I don't lose you. We'll turn our miter to 45. And we're going to go with our first 45-degree line going back up this right side. Now we'll go ahead and flip our 45 the opposite way and cut this next 45-degree mark right at the bottom of this piece. Now we'll turn our miter to 10 degrees, and we'll cut our very top 10-degree mark that we made earlier. Now I'm going to go past my line just a little bit so I've got some wiggle room just in case I need to make any adjustments. Now these next two lines I'm going to cut over at the bandsaw, but if you have a jigsaw with a good blade, that'll do just fine cutting this out. Now, take that cutoff that you just cut out of that notch, and we're going to head over to our miter saw and get this cut to fit. Alright, I'm going to turn my saw to 50 degrees, and on the piece that came out of that notch, we're going to put a 50-degree miter from the top left corner down. Now bring your pieces together, and right at that short point where they both meet, line those up and make a little tick mark right here on the very edge. And that's a 45-degree miter, and we'll go ahead and get that cut at the miter box. Now I'll mark 1 3/8 inches from our right side at the top. I'm going to go 7/8 on either side of that mark. And I'll transfer those marks to the very top. And I'm going to be notching out 3/8 of an inch. And I'm going to do that over here at the table saw. And being that this is end grain, we'll add a dab of glue. And we're going to let this first layer of glue soak into that end grain as much as possible, and then add a second layer. The glue will hold a little better than it normally would. Give it that nice rub joint and let it stiffen up a bit. We'll let that dry, and I'll meet you back here. Alright, and from the very bottom, I'm going to drill in at an angle, and we're going to add a 2.5-inch T20 screw to the very bottom to help stable this piece, using an 1/8-inch bit. And I'll switch to a 1/4-inch bit and just drill down about a 1/4 inch. That way I can hide the head of the screw with a plug. And there we go. Give it a little test run. That's perfect. Whether it's the heart-shaped candle holder or these awesome headphone holders, these two projects can garner you millions throughout your woodworking career if you play your cards right and get busy. Scott.